Hello, and welcome to the opening session of the inaugural IALD Enlighten Americas Online. My name is Candace Hubner, and I am the Administrative Coordinator for the IALD. And now, I'd like to turn the session over to the IALD President, Douglas Leonard.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the world right now. And welcome to our first ever IALD Enlightening Americas online event. We're excited to be here together at a time when we may feel far apart. Although we may be connecting from our homes or offices, it is amazing to think that we have so many people here today from all over the world. People who may not have been able to attend our in-person event, but can attend today. This year, we ask for your participation and engagement in helping make this Enlightening Americas online event interactive and fun for you and all of us. And this means doing things differently. Turn on your cameras for the interactive sessions. Use the chat feature. Visit the virtual expo rooms on breaks and explore our new virtual experience with openness and adventurous spirit. As you may know, our enlightening events are designed by lighting designers and for lighting designers. I'd like to especially thank the IALD Content Advisory Group led by Chair Diane McNabb Rodriguez. I'd also like to give a big thanks to our sponsors today who help support the IALD and help make this event possible. Cooper Lighting Solutions as a platinum sponsor. Thank you, Cooper. We would also like to thank DLLD, Lutron, and OCL Architectural Lighting as gold sponsors, and EcoSense, Hepper USA, and Medi North America as silver sponsors. We want you to have a fun time at Enlightening, so play the scavenger hunt game on your desktop or mobile app. Complete challenges and earn points. Prizes will be awarded at the closing session. Before I introduce our opening speakers, I'd like to thank Landscape Forms, which has generously sponsored the opening session. Landscape Forms is an industry leader in integrated solutions of high design site furniture, advanced LED lighting, structure, and custom environments. The goal of outdoor lighting is not to turn night into day, but to provide effective and beautiful lighting that delivers a great visual experience. And now, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to today's opening session on what inspires you and how is it different now than when you first started lighting design. We have three amazing speakers from around the world who will each share their own perspectives, experiences as leaders in the profession, and insights with you. The speakers are Keith Bradshaw, Susanna Antico, and Stephen Rosen. Our first speaker, Keith Bradshaw, is a professional member of the IALD, is a senior partner of SPEIRS and Major in the UK, and is recognized as being one of the world's leading lighting designers using light and darkness to enhance the experience of the visual environment. His passion and expertise in creating experiences for people through light is evident in the successful outcome of the projects.
My journey with light has not always been a straightforward path. It took me a long time to realize how the things that were inspiring me and that were engaging my imagination might in any way turn into a way of working. I had from a young age a fairly clear idea that I was interested in being an architect and creating spaces, although I think in truth, I was only really interested in how buildings looked at that point. So it's quite troubling when I realized, after having studied to be an architect, that I didn't really want to be an architect at all. I worked through this dilemma by carefully reflecting upon what it was that led me into architecture and being inspired by space. So prior to going to architecture school, I'd gone to art school for a time to work out, before going into the vocational training as an architect, if being an artist of some shape or form would be of the right route for me. In a very simplistic way, while at art school, I became aware of what it was about three-dimensional space and installation art that inspired me. Although installation art was in many ways an abstraction of space, the experience of space was very pure. And one of those purities I really enjoyed was the way in which light behaved within three-dimensional space. Light inspires all 3D designers. Light captures the essence of a material or of a space. And it also felt good that the strong interplay between light and architecture was so important. And that was something for me that really began to kind of strike a chord, and in some ways became a kind of lifelong obsession, this connection between light and architecture. But it took me a while. I've simplified the journey. It took me a while to realize this, and recognizing that my interest in art and interest in architecture would come together one day through light. Whilst at art school, I was very influenced by the work of a British sculptor called Antico, who conveniently for me created a form of architecture through his sculpture. But it was at this point I first noticed architectural lighting. As I traveled home each day from art school, I would pass a lot of disused industrial buildings in the city of Birmingham, where I grew up. This was an era of post-industrial Britain that had left a huge amount of industrial relics across the city. And this was before anybody had the kind of notion to celebrate 19th or 20th century industrial architecture. There was one particular project that was unique, or certainly unique to me, and that was the lighting installation by Martin Richmond at the Tyseley incinerator, where the use of color, animated light, all enhanced the utilitarian shapes and forms of this industrial building. And then deep down, this connected a few dots for me, and allowed me to kind of imagine how light and dark was a tool for telling stories in architecture. Also, the use of light and shade and midtones in the drawings of sculptors was also a real revelation. And I recognize sometimes the best illustrators of space and light were actually sculptors planning their work. The heavy weighted drawings of people like Richard Serra caught my imagination, and then linked me to the architectural drawings of people like Lebus Wood, an American academic architect, and then on to influences from people like Anselm Kiefer and Enrique Morales. But on reflection, it was all very black and white and all rather serious, actually. I stumbled into being a lighting designer, but I really liked the immediacy of using light. It seemed to me that there was more fun and more opportunity for variation, all very kind of appealing, having kind of been, rather intense and rather heavy in my kind of appreciation of art and architecture before. It was also interesting how for me in art and design and architecture, there was a kind of recognizable fashion or a style that each architect or artist would have, and that was quite often encouraged. That consistent style, and there are very few designers, if you think about it, who have been brave enough to vary their work through their careers. But light kind of forces us to be varied. It's kind of innate ability to change and confuse and create kind of surprising effects means that you kind of can't work within one style. It doesn't suit working in that way. It even doesn't suit a kind of one working method. So nowadays I find my inspirations from slightly different places. I still find inspiration from those early triggers of light and dark, of course, but I've added to that with, I suppose, more experience, more travel, more age. So the vocabulary I find myself using to describe the work is slightly different. We live in an age now, I think, where the hardest thing to do is to keep things simple and to show genuine insight in a world of noise and distraction and speed. And actually keeping things simple, keeping light simple, is actually very tricky. There are a number of projects that we've kind of created that we've boiled down to their bare essentials to make sure that just the basic appreciation of light and form is well revealed in these spaces. But we've also done other projects which are more playful, more fun, more exciting for people just to be in for a while, just to hang around in. And that's led us to some other work, which we might even call kind of communal light, where you're engaging people, you're engaging, the light is almost like a civic banner that interacts with the people around it. I think also my interest in art and design and at the early stages was very, very singular. I think now I'm much more confident to look at things a little bit more holistically. Even though with lighting, you know, we're only designing maybe a certain part of it, it's the appreciation that all the other things around it make up the overall composition. So whereas before it was about static images and fixed views, I think time and change has become a much kind of stronger influence on the work. I think also we would design light for projects that was very much about the way it looked, but very much about the way it revealed the shape and form of architecture. But now we talk about those things as well as experience for people. It's actually very difficult, I think, to be a truly empathetic designer in any field. But once in any way you feel you've kind of mastered some control of light, or you at least understand its potential, you have this opportunity to talk more about the effects and the atmosphere of space on people. In a way, the more one works with light, the more you realize how much you don't know, which also keeps it rather exciting. And also how hard it is to really kind of capture people's emotions. But that's much more of a motivation in the work nowadays. So for me, it's been very interesting to kind of reflect on looking at these inspirations from the past and almost, you know, from the present and moving onwards, to kind of join a few dots together and to recognize that my own journey through light has been, and I think should always remain, constantly changing. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Our next speaker, Susanna Antico, is the founder and principal of the consulting firm Studio Susanna Antico Lighting Design, based in Milan, Italy. Susanna's focus in research, teaching, and practice is on creating a sustainable nighttime identity of buildings and cities. She is a professional member of IALD and former president of APIL, the Italian Lighting Designer Association.
Hi, everyone. Thank you to IALD to invite me to give this talk. My presentation is called 25 Years Later, From Passion to Profession. I like to think that my sensitivity for light and lighting, my passion for colors and reflections, comes from the fact that I was born on an island in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, surrounded by water and by wonderful reflections. I got used to marvelous sky scenes. And still today, when I go back to Sardinia, when I get off the plane, I have the feeling that the air is thinner, that my sight is sharper, and I have these marvelous skies that always add to my archive of images of daylight. There is another memory that is very dear to me, and that is the one of the landing of the house I used to live in. It was a house with 2 floors, and the landing was actually quite large. And I used to sit on the stairs and enjoy at a certain time of the day, I don't remember the season, I was 10, 12 years old, I remember a marvelous atmosphere of peace, like a private space where that landing was a castle, was a church, was a marvelous place, very quiet, very beautiful. And still today, when I pass by banal spaces like the landing I'm showing you now, I cannot stop watching how much a ray of sun can do to that place, how it can transform it, how many stories a ray of light can say about the material, about the place. And again, more ambiances and more images for my archive. I have an architectural education that I took in 1984. I didn't decide to become an architect because I have a special vocation, but my father was one, and I've spent so many hours with him in the office. All designers work so long all the time. And architecture was a good passport to travel. I worked 4 years in New York. I came back in 1990 and I opened my old small practice with 2 colleagues that also studied abroad. And we were full of energy trying to do projects. And a few accidents, lucky ones I would say now, accidents related to the lighting of our projects, made me study lighting design on my own so much I didn't know where to ask for some help. And after a while, a couple of years, I decided that architecture was exactly what I needed as a base to become a lighting designer and just work with lighting. And I remember the face of my colleagues. They just couldn't believe it. They were looking at me and say, "You're just going to do lighting and you're going to throw away your degree? And why can't you do both? I mean, what a fancy idea is that?" And, you know, at that time, lighting designers were the technicians at the Scala, in theaters, or people working for manufacturers, international manufacturers that had some ideas about quality lighting. But in fact, it was very difficult to get any information. Lighting designers were like rare birds. But new technologies bring new professions, and something was happening in the world of lighting design. And I started getting in touch with architectural lighting designers coming to Milano during Euroluce. We are talking like 95. And I attended a lecture once. I can't forget that. It was by Roste Alessi. And I remember the impact, the feeling I got from seeing one of his projects. It was a project of urban lighting. And the first thought I had was, this is so beautiful. And the second one was, if someone is ready to pay someone else to do this kind of project, this profession is going to come true one day. And it was totally fascinating. It was very difficult to get any kind of information of literature on quality lighting, on lighting based on perception. So another lecture I attended in Milano during Euroluce, I think it was 1997, was a lecture of Janet Lennox Moyer. And I was able to buy one of her precious books. And I say precious because a friend of mine told me, get that book immediately. Such literature is impossible to find. So don't think I made a mistake. And I'm showing you a really ugly picture of her books now. Her pictures were wonderful, but we used to copy and to make scans. We didn't have smartphones. We didn't have all the information we have today. So it was like a black market of beautiful images of lighting design, urban lighting design, because I discovered quite fast that that was my passion. I don't know how many times I've used the image on the left. That rose garden has been a reference image for my client for so long. And we were living in marvelous times. You know, new technologies require new professions. So I used to meet that small group of European lighting designers twice a year if I was extremely lucky, once a year, sometimes not at all, because traveling was very expensive. We were struggling to do our work. And but there was something boiling, something was happening. So between being a workshop head in order to pay my traveling and meeting colleagues with whom I would exchange information and get the feeling of what was going on in the lighting world, I moved on for all those years. And here and there, you know, also talking with the students and thinking the more students there will be in lighting design, the more this profession will, in a way, conquer the world of being more appreciated and more real. So, and in the meantime, there was more and more request for lighting designers. You know, the world was moving in different directions. And 25 years later, wow, there is so much going on. There is so much literature that is available. There are so many conferences. There are wonderful awards, and the level has gone up so much. If I could have imagined 25 years ago, because I get this line of 1995, 2020, we knew we were going to get somewhere, but I would have never expected we would have gotten so far. Last week, I attended a great lecture on the optical revolution of Jan van Eyck. Simply fascinating. Lighting is in front of you. It's an international language. It doesn't need a conversation. You know, it's made out of impression, senses. Painting and paintings are a source of inspiration as much as is, you know, daylight, and as much as experience here is. The more you work with light, the more you want to work with it. It is discreet. The less you see the intervention, the better the result. And I have another nice example. I was on a plane with a friend, unfortunately more than a year ago, because traveling is now so difficult. And I saw what you see here, and I started taking pictures. And my friend said, is there anyone you know down there? What are you taking pictures of? And I said, look at the reflections. It's the clothes of the people that reflect against the wall of the aircraft. And she looked and she said, how interesting. I would have never noticed it. So this is also interesting, but this is for another talk. So I think that in the design world, lighting design is the nicest profession, and society, build space, just can't do without us. And it's an honor and also a social responsibility to get involved with light. And I hope to be able to continue learning and contributing with my work and my experience to the amazing lighting design world. So thank you for listening to me, and thanks again to IALD for this wonderful invitation. Thank you.
Thank you, Susanna. And last but not least, I welcome Stephen Rosen. Stephen, a fellow of the IALD and past president of the IALD Education Trust, is the president and creative director of Available Light, an innovative award-winning lighting design firm with offices in the East Coast of the United States. In hundreds of projects across the globe, Stephen's passion for light and design spans commercial, educational interiors, hospitality spaces, dinosaurs sunning themselves in natural history museums, and aliens warring in trade shows, exhibited displays.
Greetings. Even with the COVID-19 fog that has settled in, immersing us in a bit of anxiety and a lot of introspection, I am humbled and delighted to speak with you for a few minutes about inspiration and motivation. Ah, color and light. As a young lighting artist coming out of school, I had a limited worldview, but man, was I inspired by light. Manipulating shadow and highlight to reveal form, building dynamic transitions, synchronizing modulations of light and music, fashioning secondary shadows with color and angle. This is all that mattered. I lived, breathed, and consumed light. However, as my experience grew, I began to see my craft and the light that I created through a much wider angle lens. Over the long arc of a career, my world has continued to expand into ways that my younger self could never have imagined. My assistants have taught me as much about light as I have taught them. So many questions. Why did you select that fixture? Why did you put it there? How do you control it? Talk about inspiring. My assistants forced me to contemplate and defend my impulsive choices. Fantastic. Eventually, the fruits and distractions of life began to compete with my quest to create the perfect light cue. In time, a peer joined my burgeoning company. Not only did Kathy Abernathy bring a world of new ideas and inspiration, she insisted I join the IALD, where I quickly learned the joy of being immersed in a professional organization that was bigger than both myself and my company. Like so many have said before me, the return on investment was spectacular. You get so much more than whatever effort you put in. In fact, recently, in a quote about the IALD, my friend Yali To said, "I was able to connect with lighting designers all over the world, and I realized I was not alone." To expand on that comment, what I have also learned is that very few of the challenges that face me in running a design firm are unique to me, and I am constantly inspired by the colleagues to whom I reach out to for advice. Over time, inspiration becomes far more layered, enchanting, and expansive. I learned that I had a passion for building an organization while working with, mentoring, and learning from a group of talented and creative designers. I was attracted to exploring something bigger. My compass will always be the fantastic team I work with at Available Light. I am grateful to each person for pushing me out of my comfort zone and always challenging me to do better. Each person, designer, marketer, bookkeeper, manager, is not only invested in the success of the firm, but they harbor a sense of purpose and understanding that every project we undertake requires community support to be successful. That my team has continued to work, collaborate, and thrive through this long COVID nightmare is a testament to an amazing group of people, and I am thankful for their spirit. My team's commitment to one another is the inspiration that gets me out of bed every morning. It brings purpose to my professional life. After attending a very intriguing webinar entitled Light as Object a few weeks ago, I found myself newly inspired by the philosophical manifestation of light. I wrote this to my young colleague and presenter, Reinhard Swart. As our search for knowledge, truth, enlightenment, and beauty grows ever more complex, especially within the context of the current popularist movement and the debilitating strains of the worldwide pandemic, we must continue to celebrate and unleash truth and beauty wherever opportunity presents itself. I relish the international lighting community writ large. Designers, manufacturers, educators, salespeople, and support staff. You are my home, especially in these extraordinary and challenging times. I look forward to your works of innovation and inspiration as we craft places of joy while working to reduce our impact on an ever more delicate planet. I dream of the day when Dr. Fauci says, "Stow away those masks, hug one another, and rejoice in the basic need of social gathering." I will continue to delight in the sunrise beside the vast and roiling Atlantic Ocean, reminding me that all things are possible as life unfolds in its cycles. While my wife Susan and I enjoy the experience of seeing our children mature into adulthood, the choices they have made are another ring of inspiration for both of us. And I look forward to learning what inspires each of you. It is fuel for my future creativity and happiness. You, dear colleague, are a beacon illuminating the future. And always remember this simple yet poignant point. You are braver than you believe, and stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. Enjoy the conference and virtually enjoy each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. It's been extremely interesting to hear what has inspired each of you, and that will help us all think on how we can use this to inspire ourselves and others. Thank you for attending. The next 2 sessions start at 11:45 a.m. Chicago time. Please note that you will have access to the majority of the sessions after the event.